Okay, number 10, Yuba City's Development Impact Fee Study and Travel Demand Model Update. Award Professional Service Agreement for Transportation Engineering Services presented by Diana Langley, our interim city manager. Diana, it's all yours.
Good evening, my Vice Mayor and Council. And so this presentation is a repeat from the transportation workshop last Tuesday, but for the public, I'll go over it again. The city's travel demand model was prepared in 2004. So what a travel demand model is it looks at the projections, looks at the general plan, the roadway network identified in the general plan, and creates a model so you can see as growth occurs how traffic is going to react to that growth. It's been periodically updated since with various projects. As I mentioned, the network is based upon the general plan, and it's primarily used as a basis for traffic impact studies. So as projects come in and submit development applications, we then utilize that model to determine what their impacts are going to be. The need for the update is to reassess growth projections. When the original model was prepared, it was based upon much more aggressive growth projections. Update traffic count data and land uses. Evaluate the need for 4-lane arterials. Update the circulation element of the general plan. Provide thresholds for when a traffic impact study is triggered for development projects. SB 743 implementation, and update road development impact fees. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about each one of these items. In terms of evaluating the 4-lane arterials, what we found in preparing the El Margarita master plan is that the general plan showed that Bridge Street should be 4 lanes beginning at Western Parkway all the way to the east. When we reevaluated and updated the analysis, what we actually found is that Bridge Street between Western Parkway and El Margarita Road could just be 2 lanes. There was no need to actually increase it to 4 lanes. So what does that mean? That means less cost for to be included in the development impact fees, and then that becomes more of a local road that's just part of the development. The updated circulation element is needed to address level of service policy, to consider potentially exempted corridors. In the current general plan, it identifies that level of service F is acceptable on the 5th Street Bridge, but it doesn't allow that anywhere further to the west of the 5th Street Bridge. So as the city continues to grow, what this will do is impact the development of projects within the city, because once it gets to a certain level of service, if you can't mitigate it, then it becomes an issue. And so this would allow us to modify that level of service policy. It would also provide guidance on thresholds that could trigger a traffic impact study for development projects. So right now, rule of thumb we use, if a project triggers more than 50 p.m. peak hour trips, that triggers the requirement for a traffic impact study. So SB 743 is a complete shift in how we analyze traffic. So it replaces intersection delay, what we call level of service, with vehicle miles of travel as the primary transportation metric used in environmental documents. It becomes effective statewide on July 1st, 2020, and as I mentioned, it's a complete shift. So our current travel demand model is not set up to analyze VMT. It's set up to analyze level of service. So this is required so that we can meet the SB 743 requirements. So as development projects are submitted to the city, we can have the tools necessary for them to be able to analyze their projects in compliance with the regulations. And then the development impact fee study. The State of California Mitigation Act, also known as AB 1600, requires the establishment of a nexus when creating a traffic impact fee for new development. So what we'll be able to do is take the output from the travel demand model, apply cost estimates to that, and then apply that to the development that's expected to occur to be able to update the road development impact fees. When you look at the city's current fees, the road portion is a large portion of that development impact fee. So the cost for Fair and Peers to perform this work is $325,000. I would like to note that a subcontractor to Fair and Peers is a local engineering firm, MHM. They'll actually be preparing the cost estimates associated with updating the impact fee program. We also have in the staff report $16,000 allocated for contingency and $16,000 allocated for staff time to manage the project. We're also requesting to authorize the city manager to execute the professional services agreement on behalf of the city, and then authorize the finance director to make a supplemental appropriation, a budget transfer from unallocated development impact fees to the CIP account. So we already have some money programmed into the capital improvement program. These additional funds are necessary to be able to fund this project, but it's coming out of the road developer impact fee. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Would anybody from the public like to speak on this item? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. All righty, seeing none. Comments from the council?
I support this. I appreciated the deeper explanation at our budget and roads presentation last week. This is much needed. We need to get this done.
Anything else from the council? Recommendation?
Through the Vice Mayor, I would agree with Councilman Baumgarten that this is what we got to have to make sure that people know in the future that Yuba City is open for business, like you said. It's going to help us with growth. It's going to help us with the impact fees we're going to be addressing in the future. And I would like to note, I do greatly appreciate the contingency fee on the backside being 5%. So I know I raised that issue last time. I'm a numbers person. So again, kudos. And we got to do this. We can't wait because 2020 is going to be on us and we're going to be unable to conduct business as we need to. So I'm in favor.
Through the Vice Mayor, one on the analysis, Diana, and we spoke about this, and so if this potential report would cover up to what, 2040?
Yeah, it looks at about a 20-year horizon.
Okay, so but there could be modifications in between before that, or
Correct.
or amended.
Right.
Correct?
So what they do is they look at what's the anticipated growth within that 20-year window and what are the improvements required to be able to meet the demands of that growth. Those are the improvements that are then costed out to then equate to a development impact fee. But along the way, as you have projects come in or if you have modifications to, all of a sudden you get a growth spurt, you can always go in and change the travel demand model to address that.
And the traffic model, can you summarize it a little bit, how you explained it to me and how that study, she
Right.
gave me the simplest version for me
Right.
to really kind of grasp it.
So the travel demand model not only looks at traffic internal to Yuba City, but they also look at traffic that's on the highways as well and from the any traffic that's coming through Yuba City. And then what they do is allocate that, okay, so how is that traffic distributed? What are the current roadway conditions? What would be the roadway conditions that would be required to meet the level of service policies that are identified in the general plan? And then from that, you get an output of, okay, these are the improvements that are necessary to meet those requirements.
And one example was it Franklin we talked about, or what area that is set up right now for a 4-lane?
Right. So in the current general plan, the way the circulation element is set up is that the arterials within the sphere of influence, so that's Franklin, Bogue, Lincoln, Bridge Street, Stabler Lane, they are all 4 lanes all the way to the outer limits of the sphere of influence. And so just from a common sense perspective, if you have your heaviest traffic internal to the city, you wouldn't expect to need 4 travel lanes all the way to your exterior limits. So that's why we want to reassess the 4 travel lanes.
And this report can then be utilized for local developers once it's completed, correct? And that would be a benefit for developers,
Right.
Potentially a cost savings?
Well, what the developers are able to do is hire a traffic engineer to take the city's travel demand model. We'll provide the travel demand model to any traffic engineering firm. They can take that travel demand model, apply their project to it, and then come up with the impacts of their project so that we can create conditions of approval and requirements for those projects.
And that would help that process move it along faster.
Having a travel demand model that meets the requirements of SB 743 is definitely going to help move that along, because from a CEQA perspective, they're going to have to analyze vehicle miles traveled. And so starting this project now, we're anticipating it's going to take about 1.5 years to complete it. And so that sets us up so that we are in compliance as of July 1st, 2020.
Okay, I have no other questions, and I motion to approve the recommendations of award a professional service, et cetera. A, B, authorize the city manager, et cetera. C, authorize the financial director, and the recommendation.
Okay, I have a first. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Diana.